Okay, well, thanks for joining us. My name is Leslie Mader, and I work with InnovAge Program of All-Inclusive Care for the Elderly, a PACE program, and I'm their Strategic Account Executive for Colorado and Virginia. And today we are going to have an opportunity to hear from Lori Collier. She's one of our dietitians in Charlottesville, Virginia. She's really fun and upbeat, and I think you're going to enjoy what she has to say today. So if you want to say a little bit about your background, Lori, that would be helpful. You're on mute.
Apologies, thank you. So I have been a registered dietitian for approximately 12, 13 years. I completed my dietetics education at Indiana University, and then completed my my clinicals, if you will say, at UVA Medical Center here in Charlottesville, Virginia. And then I moved straight into working with the elderly, which actually was not my plan. I had no intention of working with the elderly, but that was my first job, and I fell in love with it. And I have worked with the elderly ever since. And it's a very interesting and wonderfully rewarding area to work in. So I'm very passionate about it, and I love my participants and those I help. So that's a little bit about me.
Oh, great. So we just wanted, Lori and I were talking yesterday, I think it was, about we would just love it. This is a small group. If you want to even interrupt our presentation and ask a question or make a comment, we want this to be interactive. So, please feel free to do that. I'm going to try to share my screen right now. Let's see if I can get that going. Okay, yeah, you get to see my whole mess. Hold on a second. Okay, slideshow. Alrighty. And I'm going to do this, and then, except that's not what we want to do. Well, we'll leave it like that. So today we're going to be talking about hydration in older adults. And before we get to Lori's piece, which I think you're going to find really interesting, I'm just going to do a high-level overview about what a PACE program is and what it provides for older adults. So bear with me, it'll be just a quick little overview, and then we'll get to Lori. So today we're going to talk about, of course, the model of care and why is hydration vital, dehydration, signs of dehydration, why are older adults at more risk, and how to stay hydrated. And then we'd love to have some discussion, and she'll share some resources with you. So this is just a picture of what a PACE building looks like. We are a national model of, well, actually PACE is a national model of care, and we're the largest PACE provider in the country. We're in 5 states, Virginia, Pennsylvania, New Mexico, Colorado, and California. And they're usually freestanding facilities that underneath the roof of a PACE program is a medical clinic. It's a day room, day center for folks to come for activities. There's dental care, a rehab gym with endless rehab. Meals are provided there. Wounds can be looked at, triaging, all sorts of medical things can take place. So that's what a typical building might look like. And we provide transportation to those sites as well. So this is, as I mentioned, a national model, and it's approved by the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid. It's a holistic model of care, which is really designed for folks that are struggling with aging issues. The whole goal of the PACE program is to help someone age in place and not have to go to skilled nursing. PACE becomes the insurance and the medical provider, and it's all inclusive. Which is a really unique part about the model of care. And with Medicaid, it's a long-term care option. So we can talk more about that later, but yeah, so it's approved by the states. These are the 4 eligibility points, the first 4 bullets of any PACE program in the country. You have to be at least 55. You have to live in the zip codes that are certified by that PACE program. You have to be able to be safe in the community at the time of enrollment. And what that means primarily is that you're not homeless. You have a permanent address. You're living somewhere. You can be a roommate somewhere. You can have an apartment. You can live in a mobile home, a house, but you have to be safe and safe on your own too. That's another issue. The participant must meet that state's skilled nursing level of care. And for instance, in Colorado, it's 2 activities of daily living. In Virginia, it's 5. So every state's different. And that's really, it's a functional assessment to really determine the frailty of an older adult. So that's a standard point for eligibility. And in any PACE program, you enroll at the first of the month. Some of you may have seen this circle of care before. I think it's a great diagram of how comprehensive and inclusive the PACE model is. And if you look at the different quadrants I mentioned, there's a medical clinic. We become your primary care if someone enrolls with us. They have our doctors, physician assistants, PAs, and nurse practitioners, all sorts of people, basically direct and take care of all of their medical care. We also, if they're in our program, we pay for their hospitalizations. If they have to go to the emergency department, we pay for the ambulance. All of that is covered. Also, too, as I mentioned, we have transportation. We have these really fun vans, great drivers that pick people up in their homes. They walk into their home, help escort them out, escort them into the building, and again, return them home after their time at the center. We provide dental, hearing, vision, and foot care. And that's usually all done right there at the center. And some of the foot care might be done in the home, but people can get dentures, hearing aids. It's pretty amazing because those things can be very expensive, as we know. We also we deliver the medical durable equipment, anything that they might need. We do in-home services. We assess each person to see what is it they might need. Do they need light housekeeping, meal preparation? Do they need help with bathing? What kinds of services do they need to remain independent at home? And we deliver all of their prescriptions to their home in these really cool packs where they can just rip them open for the day. And it's all very, communicated, pictures, times of day to take it. And so it's really convenient for folks. We also are a social model of care. And I think it's really, as we know, as people age, they can get isolated and there's a lot of depression. And this because people can come to our day center 5 days a week. They can interact with others. They can be involved in activities. There's entertainment. So it's a real time to socialize and connect with others. So, yes. Okay, and here lastly, I just wanted to share with you, this is kind of a funky little slide on what our interdisciplinary team does. They meet every morning and discuss folks that maybe need to come in for the day, people who are in crisis, maybe someone got hospitalized. They discuss all of these people in the morning meeting and decide what actions need to be taken. So there's a lot of case management. And as you can see, there's 11 people on the team. They're everywhere from the medical folks in the clinic to home care, social work, pharmacy, the rehab team, transportation, home care, dietitian, all the different therapies of occupational and PT therapies too. So it's quite comprehensive. And so if you have any questions about it later, we can talk about that too. But so the next slide is for Lori to start taking over. So I will turn myself off so you can be the voice.
All right. So again, I have actually been with this particular PACE site for 7 years. So obviously I'm enjoying it and passionate about what I do, and apologize, I'm putting my phones on vibrate. And I also, again, apologize for my background, but you're not a real dietitian unless you have a case of tube feeding on your bookshelf. So let's get started. And again, I want this to be very interactive. If you think of questions as we're talking, please speak up, because this is really for you. I want you to have the tools needed when you are working with your clients or your residents, whatever your population is. I want you to be able to look at some of this information and go, you know what, I see that, or I don't see that, or how do I know about that? So this is really your opportunity. Jump right in, ask questions. Okay, so what you need to know. Let's move on to the first slide. All right. So super important. I think we take water for advantage, right? We're like, yeah, we need hydration. Yeah, it's important. It's 60% of your body. So if you look at this picture off to the left, you can actually see how much of your body really is water. And so we take it for granted. And so it really does play a huge role in nearly every function of the body. So we're talking whether it's regulating your body temperature to lubricating your joints. I know you guys have heard your patients or your participants' clients complain about their achy joints and their arthritis. So, there's really important for lubricating, helping brain function, and we see a decline in a lot of our patients in terms of their brain function. And sometimes it could be as simple as they're dehydrated. Maybe that's why. There's a lot of things that can impact cognitive abilities and cognitive limitations, but certainly this is one of the easiest to treat. So, the first thing I would recommend is saying, hey, how are you drinking with your water? Or how much are you drinking? Because dehydration is extremely common, as we're going to get to, but that is such a easy fix. So it should be one of the first things you kind of bring up. It also helps deliver nutrients throughout the body. It keeps the skin looking young and healthy. So I kind of use this as a push with my little old ladies and saying, hey, hydration is really important for keeping your skin looking good. So you guys can always use that as a little oomph as well. And then, of course, moistening the eyes, the mouth, the nose. A lot of our patients complain of dry eyes and dry mouth. Obviously, protecting those body organs and tissues, making those minerals and nutrients accessible to the body. You need to get them where they need to go. For example, on a side note, wound healing. If you have any of your little patients that have wounds, which is very common, especially if they're bedridden, they need to have adequate nutrition in order to deliver all of those nutrients to get that skin healed. So bed sores are a very common complication in this population. So hydration is super important. Preventing constipation and promoting digestion. I cannot tell you how many of our participants have constipation. It's incredibly common in this group, mainly because the GI tract slows down as we age. That is 100% normal, but it doesn't mean they have to be constipated. And a lot of the medications that they take to help fix constipation rely on fluids. For example, Miralax, one of the number one things that people use over the counter and that we recommend is Miralax. It will not work if you don't have adequate hydration, because it actually functions by bringing fluid into the colon to make it work. So you can take Miralax all day, but if you don't have enough hydration, it's not going to work. So super important there. And the last one is flushing out the urinary tract. UTIs are extremely common in this age population, whereas younger individuals who get UTIs, you may not notice, maybe you'll have some burning, not a big deal, right? In this population, you'll see cognitive decline, you'll see more confusion, in addition to the burning, the frequent urination, etc. So in this population, it's extremely important that they stay hydrated so they can flush out that bacteria. You don't want that bacteria just sitting around and growing. And so making sure you drink enough will help get it out. So super important, as I can say, water is just vital. And I think we take it for granted a lot of times. And so this is why it's so important, especially as we age, because we are more sensitive. Okay, move to the next one. All right, so let's talk about dehydration. What is it really? So it occurs basically when you lose more water than what you take in. And so dehydration has been determined for a long time to be one of the most frequent causes of hospitalization among people over age 65. Now, there's a couple of reasons for this. One, sometimes dehydration becomes the go-to diagnosis when they don't really know what else is wrong, but also it is actually extremely common. And we'll kind of get to issues and the reasons for that here in a little bit, but just know that dehydration is one of the most expensive and the most common issues for hospitalization in the population that you're working with. So, and there's probably a lot of things that those of you out there listening right now can't really do to impact your patients in turn medically, right? Because most of you are probably not medical related. But this dehydration is one thing you can actually do. You can you can offer beverages there at your sites, especially fun beverages in the summertime are always great. They like when you throw a little fruit in them and kiwi or cucumbers. But you can actually impact this particular area. Remind them all the time. Studies show that 1 out of 3 adults, older adults, does not get enough fluid. That's definitely true, and we're going to talk about why here in a few minutes. And it was interesting. I couldn't find any newer documentation, but in 2004, dehydration was costing about $5.5 billion in hospital admissions. With inflation and with it being 20 years later, I'm sure you can only imagine what the cost is now. So I'm sure it's far more substantial. Okay, we can move on to the next. All right, so let's talk a little about symptoms. And these are symptoms you guys out there can catch. Not all of them, but some of them, absolutely. So a mild dehydration, dryness of mouth. When you're talking to them, you might see in the corners of their mouth a little bit of like sort of a crust or a thick sort of saliva. If you see that, they're a little dehydrated. Start pushing fluids, tell them. If you see dry or cracked lips on your little ladies who come talk to you, push more hydration. And if they're feeling thirsty, now we'll get to this, thirst sensation actually decreases with age. So they're thirsty, but they don't realize it because their body's not telling them they're thirsty. So again, you may want to push it if you see the signs on their lips or cracks in the corners. Unable to urinate or urinate less, they may mention this to you, though it's unlikely. The color of their urine. So again, you guys are probably not talking to them about their urine if you're not medical in nature, but you could potentially put things out in your office, or if you have information areas, you could put this out. So if you look at the bottom of the screen, you'll notice there's sort of a different array of colors there. What you want the urine to look like is sort of a pale lemonade. You don't want it looking like apple juice. And I think this is actually a very, very helpful tip that you can give a lot of your seniors, because they know what their urine looks like. They can pay attention to this easily. So even if you sort of mention it or put it out on an information board, or maybe if you do a newsletter, you could include this in there as well. They know the color of their urine. Now, there are medications that change the color of urine, and so I will give you that. But for the most part, that's not extremely common. And so I would highly recommend that you include this sort of in your communication areas, because they can know if their urine is apple juice, they need to drink a lot more. If it's that pale yellow, fabulous, keep it up. And then some other things, they may have headaches, they may have a little bit of dizziness, lightheadedness, and that's because there's not enough fluid in their blood to keep the blood pumping, and so they're getting a little dizzy and a little lightheaded. Weakness, fatigue, trembling, lethargy, some confusion, if you notice some confusion, decreased functional ability, just generally not feeling well. Obviously you want to get them into the doctor, but it never hurts for them to go ahead and start drinking some fluids while they're waiting to get into that doctor. Any sleepiness or irritability can be signs. Cramping of muscles. Now that happens a lot with the elderly as well, but for those of you who out there who might be active, if you're out running on a hot day and you start cramping up, one of the first things that they talk about is, are you hydrated? Are you getting enough electrolytes? So this one can apply to all of us, not just our elderly folks. And constipation as well, we talked about that. And certainly dry skin. Dry skin is very common in the elderly. So we talk to them a lot of times about using a moisturizer, but also drink more. My goodness, your body needs hydration. I always know when my legs start itching, I'm like, oh, I'm dehydrated. I need to drink more. And you should take that as a sign and symptom as well for yourselves. Now, some more severe symptoms that you may encounter. And in this situation, if you see these, obviously you probably need to refer them pretty quickly to getting some help, medical treatment. Low blood pressure, if they're low blood pressure or they're passing out, if they have a rapid or weak heartbeat or heart rate, if they're breathing faster than normal, certainly if they go into convulsions or seizures, severe cramping and muscle contraction of the limbs, bloated stomach, dry or sunken eyes, decrease skin turgor, and turgor is when you sort of pinch your hand, and if it doesn't go back right away, if it kind of sticks up and stays that way, then you're very dehydrated. So it's a little test you can do on yourself right now. Also just dry flesh skin, weight loss. Again, some of these severe symptoms are to the point where you should probably get the medical treatment. Hopefully you're going to catch them when they're in the mild, prompt them to drink more, and we'll never get to that severe. But okay, next slide. All right, so why are older adults more susceptible? When I first started in this field, some of these blew me away, that people would actually do some of these in order just to avoid going to the bathroom, but they are 100% true. And I can tell you, in my more than decade of doing this, I have seen these hundreds and thousands of times. So older adults may avoid fluids to prevent urine accidents. Your cute little old ladies who are dressed up and ready to go out do not want to have an accident. And so they get very embarrassed. And so they say, you know what, I'm going to the store today. I'm not going to drink anything because I don't want to have an accident. Well, so I will tell some of my patients, you know, dehydration can kill you. Embarrassment will not. And so we really need to emphasize that with them, because they don't want to get up and go. They don't want to have to get up in the middle of something and go to the restroom. And what we'll talk about a little bit later is, especially if you have individuals in facilities who are dependent on others, like they have to use their call bell to have someone take them to the restroom, they'll say, oh, it takes too long, so I'm just not going to drink anything, because they never come and take me to the restroom. Not a good reason and rationale, because they're going to end up in the hospital with dehydration. So also they may avoid fluids due to not wanting to, you know, use a public restroom or have to go frequently. It takes a lot of effort, especially if you have someone who's got limited mobility and they say, you know, it's hard work. It's hard work to get to the bathroom. I have to wheel myself in my wheelchair. I have to get up and walk. And that is very reasonable. It is. It's very reasonable that they don't want to do it. However, they're gambling here. You're gambling with potentially ending up in a hospital because you don't want to have to do that work. So these are very realistic and reasonable, in my opinion, reasons that folks don't want to do it. But it doesn't change the fact that they're putting themselves at risk. So we sort of need to help them when we can. If you're working with folks, try to put interventions in place, try to give them good suggestions in terms of getting to the restroom. Maybe one thing that they can do is start a toileting schedule. And this is going to sound silly, but it is 100% true. You can train your bladder. You can train your bladder to go every 2 hours or to go every, you know, amount of time. And so bladder schedules or toileting programs are one of the #1 ways that we can put some things in place to help train the bladder so that they're still getting adequate nutrition, so that they're not having accidents, but so that they're still sort of meeting their needs. So that is sort of a #1 thing that we put in place first. Let's try doing a toileting schedule and train that bladder. Other reasons that they may be at higher risk: the body naturally loses water with age. It's just a simple part of the aging process. And they also have less muscle mass. Muscle holds on to fluid. When you have less muscle, you're holding on to less fluid. You're more likely to get dehydrated. The kidneys also work less efficiently at in concentrating urine as we age. Again, just a normal part of the aging process. Things slow down a bit, including our kidney function. And so they're not as good at concentrating that urine. So you end up losing more water with the urine. Also, thirst sensation decreases with age and there's less awareness. So even though maybe they've paid attention to their thirst sensation their whole life, and they're like, well, I don't feel thirsty. Well, unfortunately, that thirst sensation is just not as accurate as it used to be. So you have to keep that in mind. And I encourage you to share that information with your patients and your clients, because they may not know that. They're like, well, I bet I don't feel thirsty. And I have to tell them, like, unfortunately, it's just not working as good. You know, just like everything else with us as we age, things sort of break down and slow down and they don't work as efficiently as they used to. Thirst sensation falls under that too. So they can't really trust it anymore like they used to. Diuretics and water pills and laxatives. I am sure that all of you guys have heard some of your clients talking about their water pills or their diuretics. And truthfully, the whole goal of diuretics is to get excess fluid off. But there's a very clear balance that has to occur between taking your diuretics and getting off excess fluid, but also staying adequately hydrated. And there is a very fine balance there for some of our folks, especially those with heart failure and those with kidney and renal impairments. And so they need to speak closely with their medical provider or their dietitian about how much fluid they should be drinking, because individuals who are on their water pills or diuretics are at very, very high risk of becoming too dehydrated and ending up in the hospital with kidney failure because they have damaged their kidneys because they got too dehydrated. So certain medications, diabetes medications, I know all of you out there probably have several individuals with the sugar or diabetes, as some of them like to call it. So those medications themselves can increase the risk of dehydration. If they're on dialysis and they're on a fluid restriction, that's another reason. If they have heart failure and they're probably taking diuretics for that, or just illness in general, if someone has a lot of infections increase the risk as well. So other things, forgetting to eat, whether they are forgetting to drink, whether they have dementia or not. Now, dementia complicates things quite a bit. If you have anyone with cognitive impairment, drinking is definitely not going to be something they think of on their own, and they're going to depend either on others prompting them, or maybe even just seeing it. If a lot of times we use visual cues, so a lot of times with our dementia folks or cognitive impairment folks, we just set that little pretty drink out in front of them, and lo and behold, they'll just take a drink of it. So part of that, and being a caregiver or being someone who works with these individuals, is you may want to be offering or just kind of setting it out in front of them, making it more aware. If they see it, they'll tend to drink it. But a lot of them will forget. And, if you work in a place where maybe these individuals still live independently, you may just want to make more visual cues for them to encourage more hydration. And also sitting out in the hot weather. I don't know how many of you see this, but a lot of our thin, older individuals have a difficult time with body temperature regulation, and they are cold all the time. That's why you see your little old ladies in their thick sweaters in the middle of June. So they a lot of times love to go outside, sit in the sun, and try to warm up. Well, what they don't realize they're doing is they're severely dehydrating themselves. There's a lot of, even if they're not physically sweating, you are still physically losing a lot of hydration through your skin and through other, while you're in your breath and you're sitting outside. When your body temperature heats up, you're losing more hydration. They're probably not thinking this, and they're probably not considering that they are slowly dehydrating themselves. So if they want to sit out in the hot weather, they need to take some fluids with them, and they need to sip on them. If you have a communal area, let's say you have an apartment complex with a communal area, what we do is we put out large jugs of fluid with cups in our outdoor areas, so that our participants are sort of prompted to drink a little more. They're not going to walk all the way back in their building to their apartment to get something to drink. Let's be honest. It's just not going to happen. I'm not even going to do that. I'm 8 months pregnant. I'm just not going to do that. That's a lot of work. So if you put it, though, right next to the door where they just came out with a bunch of glasses, they are more likely to drink it. So I highly recommend that, especially right now, this time of year. Please put some drinks out for them in whatever fashion you have. All right, next. All right, and then so how to stay hydrated. There's a lot of fun ways. It doesn't have to be terrible. I can tell you the number one thing that most of my patients hate is water. It is boring. There's no flavor. Who wants that? Nobody wants that. So how do we do this? Number one, sips throughout the day. They don't have to chug a 20-ounce glass of water. Sip on it. And here's the other thing. If they sip on it throughout the day, they won't have that sudden urge to go to the bathroom, because all of that fluid won't hit their bladder at once. You want to hit it there a little over time. So not just at meals, just sip on it throughout the day. They can carry or use a specific cup or insulated thermos to help. I can tell you right now, my grandmother carried a thermos very similar to the one pictured here. She got it at a gas station or something. And I can tell you, one of my best memories of my grandma as a child, she always had that with her. And she knew, she filled it up at the beginning of the day with ice water, and she knew by the end of the day, it had to be gone. And she carried it with her everywhere she went. So I use this specifically with a lot of my patients, especially the ones who don't remember. The ones who are on fluid restrictions, this one's great because if they know how much fluid they're supposed to drink in a day, they can fill it up and then monitor it. That way they're not going over, but they're not going under, which is key. You don't want to go over or under. So I highly, highly recommend that. They can get whatever thermos they want in every color they want, but the key is making themselves drink it by the end of the day. Limiting caffeine. This is a big one. Lots of soda drinkers out there. You got to have your coffee in the morning, and that's great. What I tell my folks is after your first cup of coffee to get you going, if you want more coffee, if you're a chronic coffee drinker, decaf. Got to switch to decaf. And here's why. Caffeine is a bladder irritant. So the more caffeine you drink, the more you go to the restroom. And a lot of times when I explain to my folks, hey, you're drinking all that and that is just making you go more, they're like, really? They don't realize that. They don't realize that caffeine is irritating their bladder and making them run to the bathroom. So sometimes a little education goes a long way. They have caffeine-free sodas now that you can buy everywhere. They have caffeine-free teas. They have caffeine-free coffee. If they can switch to caffeine-free, then that'll help them, one, probably go a little bit less, but it's also not going to dehydrate them because caffeine is a natural dehydrant. So you don't want people dehydrating themselves when they think they're hydrating themselves. Avoiding alcohol, excess alcohol. I'm sure you can all think back to your college years or to your early 20s when folks were probably out enjoying a few more adult beverages. And there was always a long line at the restroom for a reason. It will dehydrate you and it will cause excess urination. So if you can convince your clients to try to limit it a little bit, that's going to help as well. Certainly eating fruits and vegetables that are juicy. This time of year, watermelon, any kind of melon, cantaloupe, honeydew, oranges, those juicy, yummy fruits. They're in season. Now 'tis the time. They should be including those in their daily intake, and it's helping with her hydration. Certainly in the winter, they can do it as well. But right now we have an excellent arrangement of fresh produce. So they should be taking that upon themselves to include. Here at PACE, at our site, we do offer watermelon as one of our desserts this time of year. So if you offer that, or if you ever provide food to any of your clients, if you ever maybe have a receptionist area, you could have a little arrangement there next to your colorful water thermos or water pitcher that you're now going to start incorporating to encourage hydration. You could have little samples of that as well. Also eating popsicles. Now, of course, I'm sure some of you have lots of diabetics, but these days they have lots of great sugar-free popsicle options, sugar-free gelatin, soups that are lower in sodium. You don't want to encourage the salt part, but, and they even have chilled soups. I remember having a cantaloupe soup at one of my former places that I worked at. It was a long-term care facility, and they loved the cantaloupe soup. So if you offer food at your place, that may be a good option. But so this time of year, making it fun, give them some popsicles, give them anything they want. And again, in this day and age, you can get anything sugar-free. So it can be friendly to your diabetics as well. Drinking a full glass of water on a hot, humid day before those folks go out to sit on their balconies or in the front lobby, going out the front lobby door so they can sit and sun themselves to warm up. Make sure they drink something before they go. You don't want them out there all day for hours on end with no hydration. And then hate water. Of course, so many people do. Flavored water drops and powders. I've actually made my own handout with samples showing my clients what are they looking for. And they have these at every grocery store, anywhere they sell food, whether they want to go brand name like Crystal Light or Mio, all the way down to the store brand, I can tell you most grocery stores have their own generic versions, so that it doesn't have to break the bank. They don't have to spend $3 a bottle, but they come in these perfect little containers about this big, carry it in your purse if you want, in every flavor imaginable, and you add them to water directly and shake them up. You can make them as strong or as weak as you want. And I tell you, it has been a huge success with a lot of my participants who say, I hate water, I'm not drinking it. Well, if they're drinking Kool-Aid instead, is what I often call it, they are often very willing to do this. This is a cheap intervention. A lot of times you can get these little bottles for maybe $1.50 a piece, and they'll last for quite a while. They can get in any flavor they want. Again, they can get it in any concentration they want because they're controlling how much they put into it. Most of them are sugar-free. Most of them have no sodium, so it's not going to impact your individuals who have health conditions. And it is far more enjoyable than drinking plain water. So again, I've had a lot of success using these as a way to increase hydration, and I highly recommend them. Okay. Next. All right, and so here's just some good sources. If you want to learn more about dehydration, if you want to learn more about what is out there, what the recommendations are, how much should they be drinking a day, things like that. There's a great article from Mayo Clinic, Cleveland Clinic, the National Council on Aging, CDC, and I believe there's another one on the next slide. And this is actually an article I read that has really great references to it. So if you're one of those folks who likes to just have a little extra, I highly recommend checking out some of these websites and some of these articles. They're very beneficial. And so that is all we have. Are there any questions out there? I hope these were very practical, realistic things that you guys can utilize in your own practices with your own clients, patients, and things that are very helpful in giving you guys some ideas of what to look for, what to suggest. So are there any questions out there I can answer?
This was really helpful, Lori. I kept thinking, so I live in Colorado and I get dehydrated here a lot because we're at 5,000 feet. And
Yes.
so I have to take these, they're called Nun tablets, and they're electrolytes. And I have to drink them, a couple of them, a couple glasses of those a day just to help me not get headaches.
Oh, yes.
So yeah,
yes.
so I can relate to that.
Absolutely. And, even though this was cued for, I apologize, ignore that. Even though this was sort of meant for the elderly, this is applicable to everyone. I can tell you, I drive around with very big bottles of water in my car, carry them in my little tote. And so I do all of these myself. My husband, he'll drink water, not the biggest water drinker, but I have lots of grape and strawberry kiwi little water drops in our cupboard, and he uses those. It's also how I get my daughter to drink water as well. So if you have any kiddos out there who don't like water, those work for them as well. So hopefully some of these strategies will be helpful for those of you out there in your personal lives as well. So yeah.
That's great. Does anybody have any questions or comments that they'd like to share with Lori? No? Okay.
And if not, if you guys think of them later, you can send them in and they can get passed on to me, and I'm happy to help answer them.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Lori. That was really informative. And you had some really good ideas about how resident service coordinators can have these water bottles nearby and how to, just those practical tips. Those are really helpful.
It was my pleasure. And certainly you guys, I'm sure, come up with some great ideas too. But, in the summertime, this is a great time to have popsicle day. Or if you're looking for recreation activities, adding hydration into any activity is super simple. Just offer it up. Most of the time, if you make it look colorful and pretty and you offer it for free, a lot of times people have no problem with participating. So yeah. Certainly I encourage that. It doesn't have to be expensive, and it can go a long way.
That's great. All right. Well, thank you. We appreciate your time, and thank you, all of you, for attending.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.